Everyone wants to succeed, and everyone wants to leave their mark on the world, to be remembered, and to have their accomplishments glorified. But then reality sets in, and we realize that not everyone is going to be president, or a billionaire, or a rock star, or have any of those ideal lifestyles that cover the newsstands and television networks around the world. What is it that allows one person to be more successful than another? What makes them rise above the rest and become outliers? Malcolm Gladwell was born in the UK in 1963 and later moved to Canada where he spent his young life. Combining his interest in writing and liberalities, he graduated from college with less than stellar grades, but still managing to find work in newspapers such as the Washington Post and the New Yorker. In his career, he has written thousands of published articles and several books, including the most famous, The Tipping Point and Blink. Most of his writings tend to deal with the sociology and psychology based on interesting stories he finds and research he conducts. To this day, his books have sold over 5 million copies worldwide. In order to understand Gladwell's reasoning for writing the book, we must first understand what an outlier is. An outlier is any one or thing that lie outside of the normal, a phenomenon or misfit. Malcolm Gladwell wrote Outliers in an attempt to allow readers to look beyond what he refers to as society's crude understanding of successful people. Gladwell encourages the reader to recognize that there are people just as smart and ambitious as the illustrious, successful idols all around us, and yet they're not worth $1 billion. Understanding this, Gladwell proves that we must look past the actual person and look at the world, people, and experiences that surround them. Gladwell narrates the book in a very informal yet didactic or educational manner. He is able to present different scenarios, examples, and theories in order to support his several hypotheses without judging or glorifying the presented facts. He simply presents the facts and leaves the reader's mind to understand success for itself. Simple sentences are used with sophisticated vocabulary in order to present the stories that are used to support Gladwell's idea of the development of success. Throughout the story, footnotes are used in order to expand on certain research or topics related to the story being told. Gladwell often refers back to previously told stories to justify his points in the current scenario and further validate his beliefs by providing more evidence. Some visual imagery is displayed to captivate the reader as Gladwell describes the characters and settings for his stories. In Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell tells the reader that there are 3 main reasons that most successful people in our society are so prosperous. First, most of the time these individuals are simply lucky. They're in the right place at the right time. Second, they're all willing to work hard. And third, they reach the 10,000 hours necessary to master their specific field or trade. Gladwell compares the lives of Bill Gates, the Beatles, Jewish lawyers, Asian rice growers, inner-city kids, hockey players, and many others to develop evidence to prove that no man is self-made. That's almost like comparing a dictionary with an aardvark, a pineapple, and a tube of silly string. But if you look closely enough at their backgrounds, you'll find that they have a lot in common. The book begins by telling the story of a group of Italian immigrant descendants living in Pennsylvania that have much higher life expectancies than their neighbors, a clear example of an outlier. Then you look into how a birth date can make or break you in several different professions. We discover that being born in the earlier part of the year allows you to be a better and more successful Canadian hockey player. Because the cutoff is January 1st, with an earlier birthday, you are more mature than your December-born competition. Next, we look into the stories of Bill Gates and Bill Joy, both computer software geniuses, and how they were provided with opportunities that allowed them to reach the 10,000 hours necessary to become computer masters. Along with all of that practice, they were born early enough that they had all of this practice right before the computer revolution in 1975. Another genius's story is told in comparison to Gates to demonstrate how opportunities are everything. Christopher Langan is said to be the world's smartest man with an IQ of 195, but he was poor and denied opportunities, so now he lives the average life with a superior brain. Next, Gladwell tells how Jewish immigrants got to be so successful in New York City. It is said it is because their parents taught them to work hard and they were turned away from white law firms and received the less desired cases that when the legal shift occurred in the United States, they had the skills necessary to take on the cases that made the most money. The Beatles were another example of how reaching 10,000 hours of practice allows you to master your trade and rise above the rest of your competition. Because Paul McCartney and George Harrison got a gig playing in Hamburg, Germany for 8 hours a night, they were able to quickly master the art of rock and roll. The second half of the book focuses on how your ethnicity and cultural upbringing can affect your chances of being successful. Gladwell presents the examples of several plane crashes and how the crash of Korean airliner 801 in Guam in 1997 partly occurred because their culture's rules about respecting authority forced the co-pilot to not be able to effectively communicate with his captain. Where this is a negative effect, Asian culture continues to be examined as Gladwell tackles the idea that Asians are better at math than other nationalities. It turns out that because Asian nations had the patience and willingness to do labor-intensive work in rice paddy fields, allowing a certain drive to be passed down through generations. Along with their simplified number and counting system, we are provided with an example of how your culture can help you succeed. Gladwell ends the novel with a personal touch about his personal story and how the successes of his mother and grandmother allowed him to become the person that he is today. Overall, the book teaches the reader to not be so quick to glorify their successes in our society, but to look at the opportunities in the world around them to see how they became so successful.